It was the first combat strike in American history carried out entirely by unmanned surface vessels. But the explosion wasn't the remarkable part. Military planners had spent decades assuming a surface attack inside Bandar Abbas was nearly impossible. The harbor sat behind overlapping radar, anti-ship missiles, patrol boats, and electronic defenses designed to stop anything approaching from the sea. So how did three 24-foot boats succeed where billion-dollar warships couldn't? To answer that, you first have to understand one simple problem. The Navy didn't need another missile. It needed a way into the harbor. The obvious solution would have been sending a destroyer. The problem was that Iran expected exactly that. Bandar Abbas wasn't simply defended by one radar station or one missile battery. It was protected by an entire detection network stretching across the Strait of Hormuz. Every ship entering the strait could be tracked. Coastal radar watched the approaches. Anti-ship missiles covered the shipping lanes. Fast attack craft waited inside sheltered coves. Long before an American warship came within firing range, Iran already knew roughly where it was. That made the Navy's traditional options almost useless. Sending an escort alongside commercial tankers, the same strategy that worked during the tanker war decades earlier, actually created a bigger target. Modern anti-ship missiles don't care about flags. They follow radar returns. Instead of protecting the tanker, the destroyer simply gave Iranian target systems another ship to track. The Navy also tried reducing its electronic signature. Merchant captains shut off navigation lights. AIS transmitters went dark. Radio traffic stopped. Some crews even returned to magnetic compasses and paper charts after Iranian GPS spoofing made satellite navigation unreliable. It helped against radio interception. It helped against visual observation. It did absolutely nothing against radar. A 1,000-foot oil tanker doesn't disappear just because it stops talking. It still reflects radar energy like a floating skyscraper. That left the Navy with a much harder question. If they couldn't hide large ships, could they send something too small to notice? This is Conflict Vector, where we don't just cover the weapons of war. We uncover how they're changing the battlefield. That's where the Saronic Corsair changed the equation. Instead of risking a billion-dollar destroyer carrying hundreds of sailors, the Navy launched 3 autonomous attack boats. Each measured just 24 feet long. Each carried a 1,000-pound warhead. Most importantly, none of them carried a crew. That completely changed the risk calculation. A destroyer has to survive the mission. An unmanned boat only has to reach the target. Because the Corsairs rode so low in the water, they presented a completely different radar picture than a warship. Among the hundreds of small returns already moving through the strait, fishing boats, commercial traffic, harbor craft, they were far more difficult to distinguish than a massive destroyer. But crossing the strait was only the beginning. Bandar Abbas had been designed to stop intruders after they reached the harbor. That was where every previous plan fell apart. Crossing open water is one thing. Entering the harbor is something else entirely. Inside Bandar Abbas, radar wasn't the only problem. Searchlights swept across the water. Patrol boats guarded the entrances. Electronic warfare systems jammed GPS signals. Remote-controlled drones would have lost contact almost immediately. The Corsairs were built for exactly that environment. Once they reached the harbor entrance, they stopped transmitting entirely. No operator, no radio link, no satellite control. From that point forward, each boat navigated completely on its own. That also meant there was nothing for Iranian direction-finding equipment to trace back to an American operator. 3 boats, 3 different approach angles, no communications, no crew, only onboard sensors guiding them toward the target. One by one, they slipped inside. By the time Iranian forces realized something was approaching, the attack had already begun. The target wasn't the submarine. That would have been the obvious choice. Instead, the Corsairs aimed beneath it, the maintenance dock supporting Iran's Ghadir-class submarine fleet. Destroying one submarine removes one weapon. Destroying the facility that repairs, fuels, and maintains every submarine removes the system keeping them operational. The lead Corsair accelerated. Moments later, impact. A 1,000-pound warhead detonated beneath the concrete support structure. Fuel lines ruptured. Support pilings collapsed. A fireball erupted over the harbor. Seconds later, the second Corsair struck an adjacent fueling pier. Then the third slammed into the maintenance support buildings. 3 impacts, 3 explosions, less than 3 minutes. The maintenance complex that kept much of Iran's coastal submarine force operating was burning. Only then did the larger operation begin to make sense. Destroying the maintenance complex wasn't the mission. It was the means to accomplish it. The real objective was reopening the Strait of Hormuz. For months, Iran had used Bandar Abbas as the operational heart of its coastal defense network. Missiles still lined the shoreline. Fast attack boats still sat inside hidden coves. Sea mines hadn't disappeared. On paper, almost nothing had changed. But wars aren't won on paper. They're won by keeping weapons supplied, repaired, refueled, and coordinated. That's exactly what the Corsairs attacked. The maintenance complex wasn't simply a warehouse sitting beside the harbor. It was the facility that kept submarines returning to sea. It serviced patrol craft. It coordinated repairs. It supported the boats responsible for enforcing Iran's campaign inside the strait. Destroying a submarine removes one threat. Destroying the facility supporting dozens of them weakens the entire system. That distinction mattered, because while the explosions were still burning, another operation was already underway. A commercial tanker had entered the strait. Long before the Corsairs entered Bandar Abbas, the Navy had already assembled the rest of the operation. High above the Persian Gulf, an E-2D Hawkeye circled at 25,000 feet. From that altitude, it could see something Iranian coastal radar couldn't: the curve of the Earth. Radar sitting at sea level eventually loses sight of ships beyond the horizon. Aircraft don't. Looking down from high above the strait, the Hawkeye tracked every movement across hundreds of miles of water, every radar site that came online, every patrol boat leaving harbor, every ship entering the shipping lanes. That information flowed to American destroyers waiting well outside Iranian radar coverage. The destroyers stayed silent. Their own radars remained switched off. Instead of searching for targets themselves, they let the Hawkeye do the searching. If Iranian forces reacted to the strike, the destroyers already knew where they were. Meanwhile, the tanker kept moving. No navigation lights, no AIS broadcasts, almost no radio traffic. To anyone listening, it had practically disappeared. To anyone looking with radar, it was still impossible to miss. That's why the Corsair strike mattered. The drone boats weren't protecting the tanker directly. They were removing the one part of Iran's defensive network that couldn't simply be jammed or avoided. Once the maintenance complex was gone, the rest of the operation became possible. For generations, naval power meant building bigger ships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers. The assumption was simple. If you wanted to strike a heavily defended naval base, you needed an even larger fleet. Bandar Abbas challenged that assumption. 3 autonomous boats, each just 24 feet long, penetrated one of the most heavily defended naval facilities in the Middle East. Not because they were stronger, because they forced military planners to think differently. The Navy didn't replace a destroyer with a smaller destroyer. It replaced the crew. That changed everything. Without sailors on board, the mission could accept risks no commander would ever accept with a manned ship. The boats didn't need to survive. They only needed to arrive. That's a completely different way of thinking about naval warfare. Instead of asking, how do we protect the crew? Commanders can now ask, how do we guarantee the target is destroyed? It's a subtle difference, but it changes every calculation. Naval bases once considered too dangerous to attack suddenly become vulnerable. Not because their defenses became weaker, because the attack no longer has people to lose. The implications stretch far beyond Iran. Every country that relies on fixed naval infrastructure, submarine pens, fuel depots, maintenance docks, now has to assume that a handful of autonomous boats might reach them first. The age of unmanned naval warfare didn't begin with a billion-dollar warship. It began with 3 boats that never came home.